Picture a crime lord. You likely imagine a man, correct? Ruthless with cold eyes. However, the true queen of China's criminal underworld in the 1990s was a woman, Xie Yaping. She did not merely play by the men's rules, she dictated her own. She was feared, paid tribute to, and her decisions could determine a person's fate. She built an empire of underground casinos that generated hundreds of millions in revenue. She had connections at the highest levels of power, dozens of bodyguards, and a large network of subordinates. But behind this facade of an iron-willed leader lay one particular weakness, a paradox that ultimately led to her downfall. All her wealth and power proved useless against the fundamental human desire, to be loved and desired. The more powerful she became, the more acutely she felt an internal void. Her husband, for whom this entire enterprise may have been undertaken, retreated into a drug-induced haze and ceased to notice her. She could buy any car, any house, any luxury, yet she found it impossible to purchase genuine love and passion.
It was this internal contradiction, being a queen in the world of gangsters while remaining an unhappy woman in her personal life, that became her Achilles heel. She decided to apply the same method to her emotions that she used in business: total control and force, and this became her fatal mistake. Before becoming a criminal empress, Xie Yaping was an ordinary civil servant. She worked in the tax office, a monotonous, routine position. It was there that she learned all the financial schemes and loopholes from the inside and understood how to circumvent the law. This experience proved invaluable and was later skillfully applied to her illegal operations. Her passion was gambling. She didn't just play cards occasionally, she lived for it. She spent nights on end in underground clubs, driven by excitement and adrenaline. And at some point, it dawned on her, why risk her own money when she could become the one who always wins, the casino owner? And here, her greatest asset entered the picture. Her father-in-law was not just some low-ranking police officer. He was the head of the Chongqing Municipal Police and later rose to lead the Municipal Justice Bureau, effectively overseeing the city's entire law enforcement system. This was not merely a connection. This was a person who could turn a blind eye to anything.
It was his protection that enabled Xie to achieve what would have been impossible for others. She didn't just open a single casino in some basement. She created an entire network operating on the principle of an exclusive club. Entry was permitted only through personal invitation and recommendation from an existing vetted member. New clients were thoroughly searched from head to toe, and a substantial membership fee of 2,000 yuan was charged for entry. This was a strategic move. It filtered out casual visitors and attracted only wealthy players, creating an aura of exclusivity and security around the casinos. Her empire expanded rapidly. She didn't just control a few underground locations, she established a genuine national network comprising 80 casinos across different Chinese cities. To manage this criminal conglomerate, she commanded hundreds of subordinates, from high-level bosses to ordinary enforcers ready to do anything. But the true audacity lay not merely in the scale, but in the sheer boldness. Xie Yaping was so confident in her impunity that she opened one of her casinos directly opposite the courthouse in Chongqing. Another operated in immediate proximity to the city prosecutor's office. It was as if she was playing a game of cat and mouse with the law enforcement system, demonstratively showing who truly held power in the city. Her operational scheme was perfectly structured. Thanks to her high-level connections, any police raid was coordinated with her in advance. Officials received their share of the profits and turned a blind eye to her activities. She didn't just build a business, she created a corrupt ecosystem where the criminal world and authority merged into one. Her influence was absolute, and her wealth colossal. She became China's wealthiest and yet most elusive criminal.
All her subordinates called her Xijie, or Sister Xi. This nickname, common within triads to denote a boss, emphasized her absolute authority. She was not merely a business owner, she was a true leader whose opinion was respected even by the most hardened criminals. But behind the facade of the iron-willed leader hid a lonely and deeply unhappy woman. Her husband, for whom much of this initial wealth accumulation had been undertaken, had sunk into the abyss of drug addiction. He wasn't just weak, he was completely detached, living in his own world. She lacked simple human warmth, attention, and intimate closeness, things that cannot be bought with money. One evening, while at one of her own clubs, she noticed a young and very attractive man. He was full of life and energy, something she sorely lacked. Accustomed to buying anything she desired, she approached him and made a direct proposition to become her lover in exchange for a luxurious life full of money and gifts. The young man, tempted by the opportunity to become instantly wealthy, agreed. She showered him with expensive watches, designer clothes, and settled him in a lavish apartment. But very quickly she was met with disappointment. The purchased passion turned out to be fake. The young man behaved arrogantly, demanded ever more money, and showed her attention only when he wanted another gift.
She realized this approach wasn't working. Simply paying for love was not enough. Total control was necessary. And so a new, far more monstrous plan formed in her mind. If genuine affection couldn't be bought, it could be taken, forced through coercion. She decided to apply the same methods to her personal relationships that she used in business, a ruthless game played by her rules. Her enforcers acted with precision and without emotion, as was standard in her empire. They tracked down young, physically attractive men in the nightclubs of Chongqing. They were selected based on a single principle. They had to appeal to Xie herself. The victims would be drugged, dragged into cars, and brought to her enormous, luxurious mansion. They would wake up in gilded cages, rooms with expensive furniture, a private bar, and every conceivable comfort. However, the windows were barred and the doors locked from the outside. They were informed of the new rules. They were no longer free individuals. Their sole job now was to please Sister Xie. In return, their families would receive regular, substantial payments. Any attempts to resist or escape would result in severe consequences for their relatives. The paradox of the situation was its monstrous duality. On one hand, this was genuine kidnapping and imprisonment. On the other, their families did indeed begin to live better than ever before. The money arrived reliably, almost like a salary for an unpleasant but highly paid job. This was not just physical captivity, it was a trap built on guilt and a sense of obligation towards their loved ones. Xie had bought their silence by paying their own relatives. The trial of Xie Yaping became one of the most high-profile cases in Chinese legal history, yet also one of the most paradoxical. She received an 18-year sentence in a strict regime prison and a massive fine, but exclusively for organizing illegal gambling operations and corruption. However, the story involving the 16 lovers was not even included in the verdict. This was an absurdity. Prosecutors were unable to bring kidnapping charges because all 16 victims refused to testify against her. Why? The answer lies in money and fear. Ye had created a brilliant, albeit monstrous system. The payment for her lover's services was transferred directly to their families. For years, the parents, wives, and children of these men lived in ignorance, believing their son or husband had simply found a lucrative job somewhere far away and was faithfully sending money home. Had they spoken out against Ye, this financial flow would have instantly dried up. Moreover, they feared retaliation from her numerous accomplices who remained at large. Some of the victims, subjected to long-term isolation and complete dependency, may have even developed a form of Stockholm syndrome, rationalizing their captor's actions. Thus, formally, the legal elements of a crime were missing. No victims, no case. It was a cynical yet perfectly functioning mechanism of silence, purchased with her millions.
The Xie Yaping case turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg, revealing an incredible scale of corruption. Over 2,000 people came under judicial scrutiny. Among them were not only her direct subordinates and mafia bosses, but also dozens of high-ranking officials, police officers, and even judges.
It turned out that her empire was inseparable from the state apparatus. Police officers would tip her off about raids in advance. Officials received a cut of the profits from every poker table. Judges dismissed cases against her associates. She didn't just pay bribes. She embedded her criminal network into the very system of power, becoming its unofficial component. This was a high-profile case that the authorities thought to quickly put behind them. But the numbers speak for themselves. Several life sentences for her closest aides, decades in prison for corrupt law enforcement officials and civil servants. The system, if not broken, was seriously shaken. According to the latest reports, Xie Yaping herself was scheduled for release in 2027, a 64-year-old woman who had spent nearly 2 decades behind bars. The entire criminal underworld and law enforcement agencies in China awaited this moment with bated breath. After all, she was a living symbol of an entire era, a time when crime and power were on intimate terms. What would she plan upon her release? Would she seek a quiet life or attempt to reclaim her former influence? The most intriguing question remains: did she learn from her past, or would her unquenched thirst for control over people simply find new, more sophisticated forms?